Hello, folks. My name is Gary Horton, and I'm a teacher at Person County High School in Roxborough, North Carolina. Today, I'm going to talk about the Cornell summarizing outline graphic Doodle note forms that I invented for my students. And this is the Emergency Home Summit teaching series. I've been teaching 36 years. This is my 36th year, actually. And I have always been an outside the box thinker. I've always been the one that did things differently than everybody else. And it's been very well, it's been very good for me because I have had a lot of success teaching this way. What I'm going to do today is go over how this Doodle note works and how it would enhance your teaching, and especially on COVID, where you're at home and you've got all these issues going on that are distractions and stuff. And this really seems to focus students and really increases their learning. And I'm going to use partly a script so that I make sure I get certain points covered. But I'm also going to try to show you a chart that makeup chart that I use on the board the first time to show the students how to do it. And I'll walk you through that. And then I will show you some student works. Hopefully I can get the camera to zoom in enough that you can see those. So this is a real practical thing. This is this is for people that are real teachers. I'm no expert. I've won a lot of awards for teaching and for coaching, but I'm no expert. I'm an everyday classroom teacher, just like you guys. And I'm always looking for that new way, that different way to present stuff. So let me give you the history of my use of images and text in note taking and in understanding. I call this the Cornell summarizing outline graphic Doodle notes. I realize that's an awful long name for such a simple concept. I am helping my students encode and process information at a higher rate. I am always searching for a new and better way to help my students. In this desire, I have read a great deal of research over the years. I started 20 years ago with exploring the connection with images and text. I started doing two-column notes after working with Robert J. Mazzano while writing state test questions and curriculum for the state of North Carolina. I stumbled onto mind mapping by Tony Buzan out of the UK. I then started doing mind mapping with every unit, and final exam review, I would take a big long section of butcher paper and assign each group of students to create a big mind map, assigning each goal to a different group. Due to Tony Buzan's copywriting mind mapping, Nancy Margulies changed it to mindscaping. There is some really good YouTube videos on Tony Buzan about how to maximize the brain and how to do mind mapping. Well, once I started working with Nancy Margulies in mindscaping, I got to a point where I started adding mind mapping icons to Cornell note forms. So that was the first version of this many years ago. So I had a student come up to me, a special ed student, and she asked me, can I draw on my test? I found that to be very odd, and so I said, why, sure, but can you answer me a question of why? Why do you want to draw on your test? And what she said floored me and kind of directed me over the next several years to this path that I'm now on. She said, I can see it in my mind's eye. And I thought, oh, I've got something here. She has let me in on a secret that she sees it in her mind And that image and strengthens her understanding and strengthens her knowledge. So I said, sure, go ahead. Well, it came state test time, and I instructed all of my students to do the same thing. Back then, we used a little blue book. Some of you, I'm sure, remember those. We used a little blue book to record our answers in, and they were then shipped off to the state, and the state graded them and sent them back. Well, near the end of school, I got a call from the state education department and wanted to know what I was doing. And I said, what's the problem? Why are you asking that? And they said, well, your students scored 25 points higher than the state average in world history. And you're in the poorest county, rural county in the state. And we went back and pulled all of your students' blue books, and every single one of them drew in them. And they had all these diagrams. And I said, well, is that a problem? And they said, no, we just want to know why they did it and if it had any impact on them scoring so high. And I said, well, yes, I told them to do that. And as a matter of fact, I still tell my students who are taking state tests, when they give you that little scratch piece of paper, even though you're taking it on a computer, you can fill that up with everything you remember, everything and that you draw or write down on that piece of paper, you can use during the test because it's been created after the test started. So I make them make their own personal review sheets. They draw things like the triangle trade, the 13 colonies, Wilson's 14 points, and other diagrams and information and charts, that as many as they can do. And I told them the great thing about that is if you fill up that little piece of paper, scratch paper, you can ask them for another one and they'll give you another one. And as long as you create it after the test has begun, it's allowable. So one of my test taking tips on my students is I tell them to take 10, 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of the state test and write down everything they can remember. And if during the test they read a question and something else comes to mind, write it down too. And as long as it's not created prior to the test and you bring it in, then you can use it. And my students have done that, and thankfully we have scored extremely high. I was teaching earth science in a school that the year before I came, they had a 47.5% pass rate. Same students, same subject. The next year, my first set of students scored 74% pass rate. So we went from 47.5 to 74. The next semester, I scored a 75%. Same students, same academic prowess, same everything. And this mind mapping and encoding and building doodles and this type of thing is what I point to that made the difference. So I have some kind of real live examples. This really started me down the path that changed my teaching. I came up with my 5 and Thrive program, which relies heavily on image migration. I like to light up the brain. I want to start a brain wildfire of red hot learning coals to ignite in an inferno of learning. I want a precipitous rise in the classroom temperature, keep the fire department on alert. So along this vein, I came up with this year with my COVID busters. I first came up with zombie graphic organizer templates. and I put them online. Students can access them. They can use them to outline their notes. I came up with the Cornell Summarizing Graphic Doodle Notes. What I did is I split with my mind mapping icons. I came up with on one side of it is a Cornell summarizing outline on the left side. The right side of the page is the doodle area, which they fill up with doodles that are connective in nature. One of the premises that I tell them very quickly is they will not be judged on artistic prowess. When I check their notes, I'm checking to see connectability. I want that image in their mind to connect to that content. I don't care if they draw stick people. I don't care if they draw squares and circles and triangles and everything that younger children draw. If it connects to a content area, if it connects to a topic area, that's my goal. I don't care about how great their artwork is. Now, I tell them if they're great at art, sure, go ahead and draw the very best pictures you can. Incorporate color. What I find is that the brain likes color. The research that I have done says that the brain grows very bored with black and white and list and just A through B, C, D, whatever notes. So I have them color code their notes, involve color, involve pictures that they draw themselves, so it means something to them. This is the way I have them take ownership of their notes. It's their drawing for them. So as long as it meets those parameters, then that's all I'm asking for. I'm just asking for them to make it something that they like, need, see, whatever connection point they can get. The right side of the page is the doodle area, which they fill up with doodles that are connective in nature. The student is told over and over they will not be judged on artistic ability, like I said. All the research comes down to a few simple facts. Students who took notes by writing them down did 46% better than students who took notes on a computer or tablet, according to a study by UCLA. The lack of content manipulation is a serious factor in this. Thus, back to my 5 and Thrive program. We got to get our students to embark into a relationship with their content, not be a casual observer of the information highway. It's sort of like watching one of those bullet trains come by at a high rate of speed. You know something came by due to the rush of wind, but you're not really what it was or what it even looked like. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this is the way our students are seeing the informational highway now and our virtual learning. They know there's some stuff coming by. They're not quite sure what it looks like or what it means, but it's coming by very fast. And this is even worse since COVID. We really want the students to examine it frame by frame, or stop action, or stop motion, if you will. When a baseball hitter or a softball hitter is on a hitting streak, they say the ball looks as big as a beach ball, or they can count the strings on it as it's hurled at them. They can see the ball in their mind's eye going as a hit in the outfield. A very few see it going over the park, out of the park on the home run. Do not underestimate the power of the mind's eye. As this progression continues, I have also searched for the next big step, but one thing is for sure, the Cornell Doodle note form that I'm going to go over today is the best at double encoding text and messages that I find so far. The brain looks like a firefight scene in a Star Wars movie. The more active the brain becomes, the more content synthesis that takes place. An on-fire brain is a happy brain. Researchers have also told us the brain loves color and action. When it comes to note-taking, the brain does not like straight lines or lists. The brain becomes very bored with the lack of color and rigid straight lines. Nature is curved linear. Color revs up the brain till it is working at full bore. It is using all parts of the brain in a sympathy of learning. Researchers by UCLA revealed that students who take notes on hand outperform their counterparts taking notes on electronic devices like a computer or a tablet, like I mentioned before, 46% better. That is what I call first-hand interaction over a secondary interaction. There's just something about the feel of the writing implement being in contact with the hand. It sends messages to the brain and gets messages from the brain. The brain is a collecting point of all learning. The brain serves as a collection device of all data. The more connections, the more learning that takes place. The whole premise of summarizing Cornell Doodle NotesForm is to be the launching points of interconnections. The spark that builds into a raging wildfire. I see it in their eyes when they use the form. There's also some secondary or non-primary advantages to using this form. There are some most assuredly benefits from using this form. Coloring seems to calm students down. They are using coloring in nursing homes to improve brain activity and retention. Doodling is also very soothing at the same time. It sharpens focus and eliminates distractions. So by using the summarizing Cornell Doodle NotesForm, you get a calmer, more focused, and centered student. Is there any teacher out there who would say, no, that's not what I want for my students to be like? That's like a coach saying, you are too fast or too big to play this sport. Now, I know I teach like my hair is on fire, but it'll only be put out if I get the information out to my students. But you don't have to be that type of ADHD type teacher to use this tool. And the great thing about this tool is it's multidisciplinary. It can be used in any subject. It is not limited to one area of content. It builds as it's used in more and more subjects. The students become so familiar with it that they go right into it. My students like to do it. How many of you would like to have your students like to take notes? I've had students tell other students, my teacher is making us draw and doodle and color, and they all say, why? And he said, well, it helps us to learn. Overall, isn't that our goal anyway? Is to help students learn? Well, that's what this tool does. So you get a calmer, more focused, less distracted student. By combining text and images, you have a double-edged sword of learning. This allows you to cut the red tape of education and get down to the core of learning. Students taking ownership of their own learning. If we can ever get our students to take ownership of their own learning, then that's half the battle of what we need to get them to do. I'm going to now move the camera over to show you a chart that I have in my room that is a blow up of this form. Then I'm going to show you a few shots of student work doing this Doodle, Google, Note, Cornell Note taking form. Here is the chart. Okay. As you can see, it has two sides. On this side is lined. That's where they do the outlining and the Cornell note taking. And then on this side is their doodle area, which is just clear so they can draw. And what they want to do is outline here, doodle here, and make them connected, make them interactive. So I don't care if it's a stick person over here. I'm not judging art. I'm judging connectability. And that gets students to understand it better by this double encoding. What this is doing is causing two different parts of the brain to focus on the same content. If they can remember a picture that brings back content, that's what we want. So it might be a triangle, it might be a square, it might be stick people shooting at each other, whatever. We want to tie words or text with pictures. Here are a few of my students' work. As you can see, this one is about Jim Crow laws. And there's a crow that's painted up there. And there's a pencil, which means separate but equal. There's working conditions. There's a cow. There's a mouse about the muckrakers. So this uses icons, it uses pictures, and it ties in with content on the left-hand side. That is backwards, I guess, for the camera, but it is there. Over here, this is a standard student, not an honors, not a art student, but they have the Whiskey Rebellion, they have stick people, they have a gavel, they have a document that says Constitution, and they have a George Washington bust. So they met all the requirements of what would make a successful encoding. Here's another student's work. Okay. So this one, they have $100 bills, they have hands, they have a gavel. This is about the new republic, the new federal government, new money, all in American History 1, but it ties in together. Again, over here is the words, the text. Over here is the graphics or images, and they connect, they tie together. And that builds a stronger bond of understanding. Okay, over here is the Cornell notes that are from another student. Cornell summarizing outline graphic doodle notes. And here there is the outline. And over here is the graphics that go with it. So it is, again, same thing, same students, both honors and standard students. I cannot say that I've had more success with honors students than I can with standard students. I would say that's been the same. I think the success rate has been phenomenal in both groups. So this is not a program just for honor kids. This is the average everyday student that you have in class who is not motivated and letting them do some things like drawing and coloring and so forth makes them more successful. They feel more successful. They seem proud of their work. And I think that ownership piece is what we've been missing in a lot of these COVID things. Things that have been over the internet, or these lessons that are out there and you have to put them out so many days for virtual, and then you get them in class one day a week for 2 hours. And that's supposed to replace 5 days of 90 minutes. Well, it doesn't. And my concern on these COVID things is, are they getting it? I can't see their body language. I can't see their faces. I can't see them ask me questions. I can't answer questions except by videos. And it's just not the same. But this tool, I think, will kind of bring them closer to actual classes. See, I think this would work extremely well in virtual lessons as well as in-class lessons or face-to-face class lessons. So this tool works in both the virtual world and in the classroom. So if we ever do get to go back to the classroom, it can transfer right on over and be successful. I hope this in some way has helped you. Again, my name is Gary Horton, and my email is hortongary@hotmail.com. Feel free to email me if you have questions. Feel free to, if you would like a copy of the form itself, just email me and ask for that, and I will be glad to provide it for you. It's nothing spectacular. It's just very basic. It just meets the basic needs of students today. I still think there's a place for that in-hand content. I don't think that this virtual learning is the answer to all, be all. I still think there's places for us old guys in the classroom who still teach face to face. That's what I signed up for. I know I'm a digital immigrant teaching digital natives, and I've had to adapt, and I've had to incorporate, and I've had to do things like this video and virtual lessons, but the bottom line is it's still about getting students excited about learning. It's about getting their brain excited about learning. Connecting images and text is the answer. Thank you.